The Game Boy came out in 1989, and back then I was 10 years old, and I saw a lot of commercials like this on TV. Now notice here that in this commercial, what you're seeing is a very bright, very vibrant display, but this wasn't reality.
It's like child's play for grown-ups.
Now when I started collecting Game Boy devices as an adult, I pretty quickly became aware of how bad the screen was. When I turned it on for the first time and tried playing it, I found that I could barely play the device. Now, I don't remember complaining about this screen when I was a kid, but maybe it's just because my adult eyes have been trained with newer displays, and I just didn't realize how bad it was back then. And this isn't just limited to the original DMG-001 Game Boy, the big gray one, but I recently added a Game Boy Pocket to my collection and found that it suffered from the same screen challenges. So I decided to go and do an IPS backlit LCD upgrade on this Game Boy Pocket. So as I was researching kits to upgrade the LCD display in my Game Boy Pocket, I came across one company on AliExpress that looked like it had a really good approach, a good product to this. And that company was called Funny Playing Retro. Now the kit was more expensive than some of the other kits, but it had some really interesting advantages. For one, because the LCD screen in this kit is a little bit bigger than the original, it fills out the entirety of the display and doesn't leave any gaps around the edges. And this was something I liked about the Funny Playing Retro kit, is that it came with a replacement case that already had notched out dimensions that would fit the new LCD perfectly. But the device is still the same size. In fact, the case looks very similar to the original, so much so that you wouldn't be able to tell that it's an aftermarket replacement case at first glance. Alright, well, let's go ahead and take a look at how to replace the screen. Now, of course, the first thing to do is to open up the Game Boy. Nintendo devices are notorious for having a non-standard screw for holding its case together, so you need a tri-wing screwdriver bit. So if you don't have one of these, you're going to need to pick one up. I removed the 6 tri-wing screws that are holding the case together. There's 4 visible in the back and 2 under the battery door. Once the case was apart, I switched to a standard Phillips screwdriver to remove the 3 screws that were holding the motherboard to the front half of the case. And before lifting the main board out, I carefully removed the old LCD cable from the connector. Since we have a new case, I set this whole thing aside, but not before saving the rubber button pads. Now over to the new case. The first thing I did was to carefully install the screen adhesive. And I really took my time here, making sure to get it lined up just right. With the adhesive in place, I then dropped in the new display. And the bracket that's molded into the new case guides that screen into the perfect position. I then attached the LCD driver board. The LCD screen connects to this board, and then the ribbon cable connects to the Game Boy Pocket's main board. I then dropped in the buttons and put in the contact pads. I then placed the main board back on, and then connected the LCD ribbon cable to the old connector on the main board. Now you notice that there's a little tab sticking up there, and this is actually a touch sensor, which we'll talk about more in just a minute. Alright, this next piece is perhaps the trickiest part of this mod. This backlit LCD does require a power source, so we need to pull power from the power switch and feed it into the LCD ribbon cable. So here I'm tinning the connection points, and just a word of caution, when you're tinning the pad on the LCD ribbon cable, don't keep your soldering iron on there for too long. I then just soldered a really small wire between the far left leg on the power switch and that exposed pad on the LCD ribbon cable. Alright, time to try it out. I then plugged it into my bench power supply and tried turning it on. And it works. Now I can already see that the screen is much more clear. And this tab up top will allow you to change the color of the backlight. So what you do is tuck it into the top of the case, and then you can just touch the top of the screen to change the color. Very cool. Satisfied that everything looked good, I put the remaining screws in and reassembled the case. The final step was to put the plastic overlay onto the screen. So I took a minute and cleaned off all the dust particles before putting that on. I then lined it up and dropped it into place. And the final product turned out beautifully. This screen looks amazing on the Game Boy Pocket. Now overall, I have to say that this upgrade turned out really, really nice. I love the way the screen looks, the size of it, and it just makes it such a better experience playing this with a nice, bright, backlit display. So one thing I really wanted to find out was how much power this new screen consumed as compared to a stock Game Boy Pocket. So I hooked up an original Game Boy Pocket to my bench power supply and noticed that when the screen was about average contrast, it was drawing somewhere around 72 or 73 milliamps. I then hooked up the Game Boy Pocket with the new screen to my bench power supply and turned it on. And of course I was expecting this to take up more power, but wow, 154 to 155 milliamps. That's quite a bit. It doubles the power draw of the stock screen. And then when I turn the brightness all the way up, it jumps up to 226 milliamp hours. Yeah, this thing's definitely gonna drain your batteries. But At this point, I'm not really looking to take this thing on the road with me and play it out in the wild. It's really more of a collection piece, something I can pick up every now and then and just kind of play with. And when I do play it, I will definitely be enjoying this more. For comparison, here's some side-by-side footage. Alright, that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video because I certainly enjoyed making it. So until next time, go make something cool.